Me Before You by Jojo Moyes, Chapter 1, 2009. There are 158 footsteps between the bus stop and home, but it can stretch to 180 if you aren't in a hurry, like maybe if you're wearing platform shoes, or shoes you bought from a charity shop that have butterflies on the toes, but never quite grip the heel at the back, thereby explaining that they were a knockdown, $1.99. I turned the corner into our street, 68 steps, and could just see the house, a 4-bedroom semi in a row of other 3 or 4-bedroom semis. Dad's car was outside, which meant he had not yet left for work. Behind me, the sun was setting behind Stortford Castle, its dark shadow sliding down the hill like melting wax to overtake me. When I was a child, we used to make our elongated shadows have gun battles, our street the OK Corral. On a different sort of day, I could have told you all the things that had happened to me on this route, where Dad taught me to ride a bike without stabilizers, where Mrs. Doherty with the lopsided wig used to make us Welsh cakes, where Trina stuck her hand into a hedge when she was 11 and disturbed a wasp's nest, and we ran screaming all the way back to the castle. Thomas's tricycle was upturned on the path and, closing the gate behind me, I dragged it under the porch and opened the door. The warmth hit me with the force of an airbag. Mum is a martyr to the cold and keeps the heating on all year round. Dad is always opening windows, complaining that she'd bankrupt the lot of us. He says our heating bills are larger than the GDP of a small African country. That you, love? Yep. I hung my jacket on the peg, where it fought for space amongst the others. Which you? Lou? Trina? Lou. I peered round the living room door. Dad was face down on the sofa, his arm thrust deep between the cushions, as if they had swallowed his limb whole. Thomas, my 5-year-old nephew, was on his haunches, watching him intently. Lego? Dad turned his face towards me, puce with exertion. Why they have to make the damn pieces so small, I don't know. Have you seen Obi-Wan Kenobi's left arm? It was on top of the DVD player. I think he swapped Obi's arm with Indiana Jones's. Well, apparently now Obi can't possibly have beige arms. We will have to have the black arms. I wouldn't worry. Doesn't Darth Vader chop his arm off in episode 2? I pointed at my cheek so that Thomas would kiss it. Where's Mum? Upstairs, how about that? A £2 piece. I looked up, just able to hear the familiar creak of the ironing board. Josie Clark, my mother, never sat down. It was a point of honour. She had been known to stand on an outside ladder painting the windows, occasionally pausing to wave, whilst the rest of us ate a roast dinner. Will you have a go at finding this bloody arm for me? He's had me looking for half an hour, and I've got to get ready for work. Are you on nights? Yeah, it's 5:30. I glanced at the clock. Actually, it's 4:30. He extracted his arm from the cushions and squinted at his watch. Then what are you doing home so early? I shook my head vaguely, as if I might have misunderstood the question, and walked into the kitchen. Grandad was sitting in his chair by the kitchen window, studying a Sudoku. The health visitor has told us it would be good for his concentration, help his focus after the strokes. I suspected I was the only one to notice he simply filled out all the boxes with whatever number came to mind. Hey, Grandad. He looked up and smiled. You want a cup of tea? He shook his head and partially opened his mouth. Cold drink? He nodded. I opened the fridge door. There's no apple juice. Apple juice, I remembered now, was too expensive. Ribena? He shook his head. Water? He nodded, murmured something that could have been a thank you as I handed him the glass. My mother walked into the room, bearing a huge basket of neatly folded laundry. Are these yours? She brandished a pair of socks. Trina's, I think. I thought so. Odd colour. I think they must have got in with Daddy's plum pyjamas. You're back early. Are you going somewhere? No. I filled a glass with tap water and drank it. Is Patrick coming round later? He rang here earlier. Did you have your mobile off? He said he's after booking your holiday. Your father says he saw something on the television about it. Where is it you liked? Ipsos? Calypsus? Skyathos. That's the one. You want to check that hotel very carefully. Do it on the internet. He and Daddy watched something on the news at lunchtime. Apparently they're building sites, half of those budget deals, and you wouldn't know until you got there. Daddy, would you like a cup of tea? Did Lou not offer you one? She put the kettle on and then glanced up at me. It's possible she had finally noticed I wasn't saying anything. Are you all right, love? You look awfully pale. She reached out a hand and felt my forehead, as if I were much younger than 26. I don't think we're going on holiday. My mother's hand stilled. Her gaze had that X-ray thing that it had held since I was a kid. Are you and Pat having some problems? Mum, I'm not trying to interfere. It's just you've been together an awfully long time. It's only natural things get a bit sticky every now and then. I mean, me and your father, I lost my job. My voice cuts into the silence. The words hung there, searing themselves on the little room long after the sound had died away. You what? Frank's shutting down the cafe from tomorrow. I held out a hand with the slightly damp envelope I had gripped in shock the entire journey home. All 180 steps from the bus stop. He's given me my 3 months' money. The day had started like any other day. Everyone I knew hated Monday mornings, but I never minded them. I liked arriving early at the buttered bun, firing up the huge tea urn in the corner, bringing in the crates of milk and bread from the backyard, and chatting to Frank as we prepared to open. I liked the fuggy bacon-scented warmth of the cafe, the little bursts of cool air as the door opened and closed, the low murmur of conversation, and, when quiet, Frank's radio singing tinnily to itself in the corner. It wasn't a fashionable place. Its walls were covered in scenes from the castle up on the hill. The tables still sported formica tops, and the menu hadn't altered since I started, apart from a few changes to the chocolate bar selection, and the addition of chocolate brownies and muffins to the iced bun tray. But most of all, I liked the customers. I liked Kev and Angelo, the plumbers, who came in most mornings and teased Frank about where his meat might have come from. I liked the dandelion lady, nicknamed for her shock of white hair, who ate 1 egg and chips from Monday to Thursday and sat reading the complimentary newspapers and drinking her way through 2 cups of tea. I always made an effort to chat with her. I suspected it might be the only conversation the old woman got all day. I liked the tourists, who stopped on their walk up and down from the castle, the shrieking school children who stopped by after school, the regulars from the offices across the road, and Nina and Cherie, the hairdressers, who knew the calorie count of every single item the buttered bun had to offer. Even the annoying customers, like the red-haired woman who ran the toy shop and disputed her change at least once a week, didn't trouble me. I watched relationships begin and end across those tables, children transferred between divorces, the guilty relief of those parents who couldn't face cooking, and the secret pleasure of pensioners at a fried breakfast. All human life came through, and most of them shared a few words with me, trading jokes or comments over the mugs of steaming tea. Dad always said he never knew what was going to come out of my mouth next, but in the cafe it didn't matter. Frank liked me. He was quiet by nature, and said having me there kept the place lively. It was a bit like being a barmaid, but without the hassle of drunks. And then that afternoon, after the lunchtime rush had ended, and with the place briefly empty, Frank, wiping his hands on his apron, had come out from behind the hot plate and turned the little closed sign to face the street. Now, Frank, I've told you before, extras are not included in the minimum wage. Frank was, as Dad put it, as queer as a blue gnu. I looked up. He wasn't smiling. Uh-oh, I didn't put salt in the sugar cellars again, did I? He was twisting a tea towel between his 2 hands and looked more uncomfortable than I had ever seen him. I wondered, briefly, whether someone had complained about me, and then he motioned to me to sit down. Sorry, Louisa, he said, after he'd told me, but I'm going back to Australia. My dad's not too good, and it looks like the castle is definitely going to start doing its own refreshments. The writing's on the wall. I think I sat there with my mouth actually hanging open, and then Frank had handed me the envelope and answered my next question before it left my lips. I know we never had, a formal contract or anything, but I wanted to look after you. There's 3 months' money in there. We close tomorrow. 3 months? Dad exploded, as my mother thrust a cup of sweet tea into my hands. Well, that's big of him, given she's worked like a ruddy Trojan in that place for the last 6 years. Bernard. Mum shot him a warning look, nodding towards Thomas. My parents minded him after school every day until Trina finished work. What the hell is she supposed to do now? He could have given her more than a day's bloody notice. Well, she'll just have to get another job. There are no bloody jobs, Josie. You know that as well as I do. We're in the middle of a bloody recession. Mum shut her eyes for a moment, as if composing herself before she spoke. She's a bright girl. She'll find herself something. She's got a solid employment record, hasn't she? Frank will give her a good reference. Oh, feckin' marvellous. Louisa Clark is very good at buttering toast and a dab hand at the old teapot. Thanks for the vote of confidence, Dad. I'm just saying. I knew the real reason for Dad's anxiety. They relied on my wages. Trina earned next to nothing at the flower shop. Mum couldn't work, as she had to look after Grandad, and Grandad's pension amounted to almost nothing. Dad lived in a constant state of anxiety about his job at the furniture factory. His boss had been muttering about possible redundancies for months. There were murmurings at home about debt and the juggling of credit cards. Dad had had his car written off by an uninsured driver 2 years previously, and somehow this had been enough for the whole teetering edifice that was my parents' finances to finally collapse. My modest wages had been a little bedrock of housekeeping money, enough to help see the family through from week to week. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. She can head down to the job centre tomorrow and see what's on offer. She's got enough to get by for now. They spoke as if I weren't there. And she's smart. You're smart, aren't you, love? Perhaps she could do a typing course, go into office work. I sat there as my parents discussed what other jobs my limited qualifications might entitle me to. Factory work, machinist, roll butterer. For the first time that afternoon I wanted to cry. Thomas watched me with big round eyes and silently handed me a half-soggy biscuit. Thanks, Tomo, I mouthed silently, and ate it. He was down at the athletics club, as I had known he would be. Monday to Thursdays, regular as the station timetable, Patrick was there in the gym, or running in circles around the floodlit track. I made my way down the steps, hugging myself against the cold, and walked slowly out onto the track, waving as he came close enough to see who it was. Run with me, he puffed, as he got closer. His breath came in pale clouds. I've got 4 laps to go. I hesitated just a moment, and then began to run alongside him. It was the only way I was going to get any kind of conversation out of him. I was wearing my pink trainers with the turquoise laces, the only shoes I could possibly run in. I had spent the day at home trying to be useful. I'm guessing it was about an hour before I started to get under my mother's feet. Mum and Grandad had their routines, and having me there interrupting them. Dad was asleep, as he was on nights this month, and not to be disturbed. I tidied my room, then sat and watched television with the sound down, and when I remembered, periodically, why I was at home in the middle of the day, I had felt an actual brief pain in my chest. I wasn't expecting you. I got fed up at home. I thought maybe we could do something. He looked sideways at me. There was a fine film of sweat on his face. The sooner you get another job, babe, the better. It's all of 24 hours since I lost the last one. Am I allowed to just be a bit miserable and floppy, just for today? But you've got to look at the positive side. You knew you couldn't stay at that place forever. You wanted to move upwards, onwards. Patrick had been named Stortford Young Entrepreneur of the Year 2 years previously, and had not yet quite recovered from the honour. He had since acquired a business partner, Ginger Pete, offering personal training to clients over a 40-mile area, and 2 liviered vans on the HP. He also had a whiteboard in his office, on which he liked to scroll his projected turnover with thick black markers, working and reworking the figures until they met with his satisfaction. I was never entirely sure that they bore any resemblance to real life. Being made redundant can change people's lives, Lou. He glanced at his watch, checking his lap time. What do you want to do? You could retrain. I'm sure they do a grant for people like you. People like me. People looking for a new opportunity. What do you want to be? You could be a beautician. You're pretty enough. He nudged me as we ran, as if I should be grateful for the compliment. You know my routine. Soap, water, the odd paper bag. Patrick was beginning to look exasperated. I was starting to lag behind. I hate running. I hate him for not slowing down. Look, shop assistant, secretary, estate agent, I don't know, there must be something you want to do. But there wasn't. I had liked it in the cafe. I liked knowing everything there was to know about the butchered bun, and hearing about the lives of the people who came through it. I had felt comfortable there. You can't mope around, babe. Got to get over it. All the best entrepreneurs fight their way back from rock bottom. Jeffrey Archer did it. So did Richard Branson. He tapped my arm, trying to get me to keep up. I doubt if Jeffrey Archer ever got made redundant from toasting tea cakes. I was out of breath, and I was wearing the wrong bra. I slowed, dropped my hands down onto my knees. He turned, running backwards. his voice carrying on the still cold air. But if he had, I'm just saying, sleep on it, put on a smart suit and head down to the job centre. Or I'll train you up to work with me if you like. You know there's money in it. And don't worry about the holiday, I'll pay. I smiled at him. He blew a kiss and his voice echoed across the empty stadium. You can pay me back when you're back on your feet. I made my first claim for job seekers allowance. I attended a 45-minute interview and a group interview where I sat with a group of 20 or so mismatched men and women, half of whom wore the same slightly stunned expression I expected I did, and the other half the blank, uninterested faces of people who had been there too many times before. I wore what my dad deemed my civilian clothes. As a result of these efforts, I had endured a brief stint filling in on a night shift at a chicken processing factory. It had given me nightmares for weeks, and 2 days at a training session as a home energy advisor. I had realised pretty quickly that I was essentially being instructed to befuddle old people into switching energy suppliers, and told Saeed, my personal advisor, that I couldn't do it. He had been insistent that I continue, so I had listed some of the practices that they had asked me to employ, at which he had gone a bit quiet and suggested it was always we, even though it was pretty obvious that one of us had a job. Try something else. I did 2 weeks at a fast food chain. The hours were okay. I could cope with the fact that the uniform made my hair static, but I found it impossible to stick to the appropriate responses script with its "how can I help you today" and its "would you like large fries with that?" I had been let go after one of the donut girls caught me debating the varying merits of the free toys with a 4-year-old. What can I say? She was a smart 4-year-old. I also thought the Sleeping Beauties were sappy. Now I sat at my 4th interview as Saeed scanned through the touchscreen for further employment opportunities. Even Saeed, who wore the grimly cheerful demeanour of someone who had shoehorned the most unlikely candidates into a job, was starting to sound a little weary. Have you ever considered joining the entertainment industry? What? As in pantomime dame? Actually, no, but there's an opening for a pole dancer, several in fact. I raised an eyebrow. Please tell me you're kidding. It's 30 hours a week on a self-employed basis. I believe the tips are good. Please tell me you have not just advised me to get a job that involves parading around in front of strangers in my underwear. You said you were good with people, and you seem to like theatrical clothing. He glanced at my tights, which were green and glittery. I had thought they would cheer me up. Thomas had hummed the theme tune from The Little Mermaid at me for almost the whole of breakfast. Saeed tapped something into his keyboard. How about adult chat line supervisor? I stared at him. He shrugged. You said you liked talking to people. No, I'm not to the semi-nude bar staff, or masseuse, or webcam operator. Come on, Saeed, there must be something I can do that wouldn't actually give my dad a heart attack. This appeared to stump him. There's not much left outside flexi-hour retail opportunities. Nighttime shelf stacking? I had been here enough times now to speak their language. There's a waiting list. Parents tend to go for it because it suits the school hours, he said apologetically. He studied the screen again. So we're really left with care assistant. Wiping old people's bottoms. I'm afraid, Louisa, you're not qualified for much else. If you want to retrain, I'd be happy to point you in the right direction. There are plenty of courses at the Adult Education Centre. But we've been through this, Saeed. If I do that, I lose my job seekers money, right? If you're not available for work, yes. We sat there in silence for a moment. I gazed at the doors, where 2 burly security men stood. I wondered if they had got the job through the job centre. I'm not good with old people, Saeed. My granddad lives at home since he had his strokes, and I can't cope with him. Ah, so you have some experience of caring. Not really. My mum does everything for him. Would your mum like a job? Funny. I'm not being funny. And leave me looking after my granddad? No thanks. That's from him as well as me, by the way. Haven't you got anything in cafes? I don't think there are enough cafes left to guarantee you employment, Louisa. If we could try Kentucky Fried Chicken, you might get on better there. Because I'd get so much out of offering a bargain bucket than a chicken nugget. I don't think so. Well, then perhaps we'll have to look further afield. There are only 4 buses to and from our town. You know that. And I know you said I should look into the tourist bus, but I rang the station and it stops at 5 p.m. Plus it's twice as expensive as the normal bus. Saeed sat back in his seat. At this point in proceedings, Louisa, I really need to make the point that as a fit and able person, in order to continue qualifying for your allowance, you need to show that I'm trying to get a job. I know. How can I explain to this man how much I wanted to work? Did he have the slightest idea how much I missed my old job? Unemployment had been a concept, something dronningly referred to on the news in relation to shipyards or car factories. I had never considered that you might miss a job like you missed a limb. A constant, reflexive thing. I hadn't thought that, as well as the obvious fears about money and your future, losing your job would make you feel inadequate and a bit useless. That it would be harder to get up in the morning than when you were rudely shocked into consciousness by the alarm. That you might miss the people you worked with, no matter how little you had in common with them. Or even that you might find yourself searching for familiar faces as you walked down the high street. The first time I had seen the dandelion lady wandering past the shops looked as aimless as I felt. I had fought the urge to go and give her a hug. Saeed's voice broke into my reverie. Aha! Now this might work. I tried to peer around at the screen. Just come in, this very minute. Care assistant position. I told you I was no good with... It's not old people. It's a private position. To help in someone's house. And the address is less than 2 miles from your home. Care and companionship for a disabled man. You can drive? Yes, but I would have to wipe his... No bottom wiping required, as far as I can tell. He scanned the screen. He's a quadriplegic. He needs someone in the daylight hours to help feed and assist. Often in these jobs, it's a case of being there when they want to go out somewhere, helping with basic stuff that they can't do themselves. Oh, it's good money. Quite a lot more than the minimum wage. That's probably because it involves bottom wiping. I'll ring them to confirm the absence of bottom wiping, but if that's the case, you'll go along for the interview? He said it like it was a question, but we both knew the answer. I sighed and gathered up my bag ready for the trip home. Jesus Christ, said my father. Can you imagine? If it wasn't punishment enough ending up in a ruddy wheelchair, then you get our Lou turning up to keep you company. Bernard, my mother scolded. Behind me, Grandad was laughing into his mug of tea.